Hey there, and welcome back to this week's edition of Ask Ron, where Gold Club members ask Ron questions. Got Ron here today. How are you doing, Ron?
I'm good, man. I'm good waiting on this hurricane to come.
Yeah, it's on its way, not much longer. Well, one thing I do want to remind you guys of, this is a benefit for our Gold Club members. So if you are a Gold Club member, all you have to do is go to the forum section, click Ask Ron, and leave a post there, and we will get that question answered next week for you. And if they aren't a Gold Club member, how can they join, Ron?
RonsGoldClub.com.
That's right. And I'll leave that link in the description for everyone. Make it easier on you. And that being said, we can go ahead and get started here. Our first question comes from Tony and Angie Stewart. They said, how do you handle buyers who either want to buy your house at your price immediately and cash you out, or say that they're expecting the money within a short period of time to cash you out? Do you sacrifice the Golden Goose or hold out for someone who needs more time?
I'm not 100% sure I understand that question. But listen, I got to do what the seller will allow me to do. If they'll take terms, it's going to be for a longer term. If it's a cash out, that means I'm buying it really cheap, which also means that it needs rehabbed. So I'm not sure what that question actually meant.
I think that they were saying with tenant buyers. So if you had a tenant buyer that just wanted to pay cash for the house, or said that they were going to pay cash for the house soon, would you wait for someone that needed more time to try and preserve the Golden Goose?
I'll take the tenant that'll give me the good size down payment, and what happens after that, deal with it as it comes. If they want to cash it out, then they cash it out. I certainly wouldn't lay awake at night worrying about that happening. No. It's almost never going to happen.
All right. Next up, what can we do to avoid the seller borrowing money using the property like collateral? So, like with the seller, how do you avoid them getting like a refi or putting the house up for collateral?
Well, it depends. Are we talking about if I'm lease optioning it from the seller? That's the only time that could become an issue. If I'm buying it, they can't do it anyway. They don't own the house. Deed title is transferred. So in a lease purchase, I'm not worried about it. Frankly, I got a legal binding contract. In all my years, I've never had anybody go around behind my back and try to breach their own contract. Now, if they got a credit line, a HELOC, if they want to borrow on it, they can borrow on it as far as I'm concerned, up to the amount that I've agreed to pay for it. But I've never had one do that. Once they lease option the house to you, if they got any sense, they understand that they can't go around you and do that. Sometimes, though, I've had to actually give them permission to get more money on their credit line. Again, that doesn't hurt me. It's just not going to raise my payment. If they get more money, then they're going to have to come out of pocket the payment for that extra amount. But I've never had it happen, to be honest with you. Never.
All right. Next up, does Deal Finder give us comp data for other properties in the area of the subject property?
Well, it's not Deal Finder anymore. It's Dreams Pro. And the answer is yes. You can get comps all over the country with it. And they're lined up just like our old program. They're lined up right there, easy to read for you.
All right. Next up, where does the 70% come from in the Mayo formula?
It comes from several different figures that you don't think about if you're watching the TV shows. They don't show you this. You got buying cost, meaning closing cost, not the purchase price. You got holding cost, which can be a very big number, because remember, taxes are accruing the whole time you hold that property while you're trying to rehab it and sell it. Got insurance, got maintenance costs, lawn mowing, and all of that. And then you got, of course, if you're going to borrow money, you got interest, but that's not part of the 30%. So, okay, 30% does not include interest, does not include real estate commission. To factor that in when you're making this offer, make sure your offer is way below Mayo to compensate for the things that you might have missed. It also doesn't include the sales cost. The sales cost, you're going to have closing costs when you sell a house and cash out of it. And let's say, I think Yeah, buying, holding, sales. Oh, no, it doesn't include any hedge factor, Murphy factor, which happens every time I sell a house. Murphy jumps in. That means that the repair cost could be higher than you think, which it usually is, or the purchase price has to be lowered because appraisal, some conservative appraisal on the rear end. And sometimes you are going to want to pay the closing costs for the buyer if you're down in these low end houses because they just don't have the 7.5% in cash it would take for the down payment and their share of the closing costs. All these things are part of it. So what I did was I plugged in at least a 20% net profit along with those other costs. It comes up to about 30%. But again, it does not include interest and it does not include real estate commission. And it does include about a 5% hedge factor, but many times that's not near enough. I hope that answered the question.
I believe that it did. All right. Next question is, what happens when the tenant buyers are out of work due to economic times we're facing and can't pay their rent?
Then they have to go. Want to run a charity? Look, I understand the human part of this business and I deal with it. I'm usually very lenient about it, but I'm not going to let somebody stay in my house and not make me a payment, period. To me, that's like somebody putting a gun up to my head and robbing me. This is where your feelings are going to have to be set aside. You got to do what you got to do, especially talking to you ladies out there. You let emotions get in the way of business. And all that's going to do is create a bigger mess for you. You got to make the underlying payment, whether they pay you or not. I would think that you're not going to want to put up with that very long, and you're just going to file eviction. On my deals, if we haven't got the money by the 5th of the month, they owe me a 10% late penalty. And if they're if we get a hold of them and I don't see any clear path in them to catch me up, I'm going to have to file eviction on them. I can't help it. I know all of the reasons why they can't pay are really not a concern to me. I understand, but I can't just give them free rent, period. So I have to, do the hard thing to do, and that's file eviction and let them get on with their life. Now, I usually try to bribe them out first. I mean, if they can't pay and they know they can't pay, they're going to be very glad to hear that you're willing to give them $2,000 or $3,000 once they're out of the house and leave it clean. That's what I do.
All right. And then last but not least, how do you pursue a foreclosing process?
Hire an attorney and say foreclose. That's all there is. That's all you do. You got to give them the facts of how much are they behind, how much the principal balance is, and when they stop making payments and so forth. But once you hire the attorney, you're out of it until the sale happens and somebody's bought the house and made you money, or you got the house because nobody bid your minimum bid on it. And I don't care what state you're in. That's all you do. You hire an attorney. They take it from there.
All right. Well, that's all the questions that I got for you this week. Is there anything you want to say to the people, Ron?
No, you guys keep plugging. We're going into very close to an election, and I'm just as concerned about it as any of you are. And then, I know whatever the outcome is going to be, it's going to change our future. I can tell you that for sure. So again, you should be keeping focused on creating more revenue in your life, especially that cash flow that comes in that you don't have to get up in the morning and go get, like on all of our terms deals. So we're all looking for the morning of November the 6th. See you next week.
See you next week, Ron. Thanks so much.
Bye.